Hello. Hello, hello. Here, hello. So let's talk about Baiken. You guys want the cool Baiken guide? I'll give you the cool Baiken guide. But I'm going to talk about like my first impression of what I think is good with her and like what I think will benefit you if you play her, okay? So number one, a lot of her good normals, I think 5k is really good. 6k is insanely good. I think 6k could be one of her, maybe one of her best ground normals. 2S and 2-6k are the really good ones. She has some really good buttons like 2H. She's like, Tatami is pretty good. H Kabari is very good. 5H is very good, but they're very specific on when you should use them. 2S for the most part is like perfect in a lot of ways because it enables her to control space really well. Here's how I think you should play Baiken. I think the idea is you zone them, you RPS into Kabari, right? And then you implement things like 5H. Since 5H is disjointed, if they try to interrupt with like 6P or something, for a demonstration, if they try to like mash 6P, this will usually beat a lot of things, right? Let's say if you do this, one, you can whiff punish. Depending on distance, just implement 5H and just do this over and over again. It's a good way to stop them from pressing anything. Another good option is 6H, though it is not as disjointed, so it's more if your spacing is good. That's kind of like her basic pressure idea. She builds a lot of meter, or sorry, she builds a lot of risk. And this is through Tatami and 6k. So one thing that makes 6k really good, and it's quite rare in this game, depending on how 6k is spaced, this move can be plus. It can be up to +4. The later it hits, the more plus it is. This is why 5k is really good, because 5k will end up pressure, like it enables you to step forward even with pushback, right? This is why you can essentially loop this infinitely. What makes this good is the threat of Tatami, because Tatami gives her a lot of damage on counter hit. It's one of her best targets. And the fact that she builds a lot of risk makes it hard to reliably get out without taking a good risk or like using meter. Like for example, FD is very, very good against Baiken, because if you get spaced too far, like let's say here, they can jump out of the Tatami. Here's what I'm going to recommend. So 2S is very good for a lot of conversions as well. What makes it especially good is the gun. You can always hit confirm into gun from this. If you're close enough, you can hit confirm into the other super. Well, I think it's the highest damaging super in the game, so hit confirms into super like this are very, very strong. For the most part, that's like her main game plan. The thing is, she's not that different. Like when it comes to how you play neutral and how you play offense, she's a very standard gear character. She doesn't really do anything super cheesy. A lot of her cheesy stuff comes from if she tethers you or if she's doing offense with meter, right? This is when her game plan starts to shift, right? With meter, you can do TK Yozansen. TK Yozansen gives a lot of damage on hit. It gives a good combo. Pretty much whatever you want to do, it leads into something good. But she is very meter hungry because of the fact that a lot of the time, like, she doesn't get good hit confirms off of straight hits unless you have meter. Varus 2H doesn't work on standing, but works on crouching. It gives you a hard knockdown, and you get to run a safe jump up on it. Another thing is she's very basic and very standard. If you're like a Street Fighter player, I think like her neutral is probably like one of the more intuitive for you. I don't think she's really designed to just like swing and go ham because her conversions aren't super reliable, but things change when you can force them into the air. A lot of her return in the air is super good. She can get probably the highest amount of damage in the game off air conversions. Basically, her advantage is that she can always commit or always convert into something from the air. For almost always. You can't if you do like jump deep, but for the most part, she just gets a very good amount of damage. Her thing is that she can convert very well off straight hits. Better than like the average character. I think if you can force them to play in the air, like with 2S, 2H, H Kabari, that's really ideal. A lot of her moves, if you look at them, are very like, they're very long range and control a lot of space, so they don't lead to a ton. And that's kind of like the weakness of her, because if you don't get a ton of return and you don't have meter, then like, I mean, no one's gonna really care if they get hit by 2S, right? This is kind of what's rough about her. A lot of her like regular confirms are harder to get, but she has something that a lot of characters do not. She has a safe jump off of pretty much almost everything. A safe jump off of almost everything in this game is extremely rare. Extremely rare. Whenever you end an H Kabari, I guess like some knockdowns are off of TD. There we go. They can all be a safe jump. So that's really strong in this game. It makes her kind of consistent. That means she can always start her offense from getting a knockdown, which again, she gets knockdowns off of pretty much everything, which means she gets to start it safely, which if you have meter, this is where she's kind of fucked up, because you have to guess, is she going to do like an extended block string? Is she going to go for Yozansen? TK Yozansen is pretty much one of the key things to keep in mind about using, because it does a lot of damage. I would highly recommend learning this tether setup. So I don't know how good tether is currently, because at the time of me doing this, you know, we've not really found a ton of stuff, but there's one that is extremely good, and it's just this. If you do super jump P, you can do a high low off this, right? This will be a safe jump if you do if you choose it to be, like the same side jump S will be a safe jump, as you can see. But if you do falling Yozansen, this will cross them up, which is extremely good. That means there is no real, there's no real tell. There are some other ways of doing this, like you can do this, you can do tatami, super jump tatami, and depending on how fast you do it, you can be same side or not. I personally don't like this as much, but if you do, then you should use it for sure. S Kabari, we don't really know that much about yet. Like, there are some cool things you can do with it, like you can backdash and change your momentum from it, but for the most part, we don't really know what to do with it yet. It seems kind of whack. When it comes to her counter is honestly almost worth a video in and of itself. But so I'm going to explain we're going to go into something a little meta with Baiken, but this is very important to understand. Baiken inherently has the threat of this, right? And this is very strong because it's a lot of damage, right? Right, it's 130. That's like pretty much the equivalent, or it's almost the equivalent of like a Soul Wild Throw, right? Think of it as like a high damage Dragon Punch almost. Though it's much more punishable if you mess it up. What makes it really good is that since she can always do it, and she can PRC it if she chooses, they have to always respect this, right? Which means it enables you to do things that other characters can't consistently do. So like, for example, a lot of characters may do delayed meaties, right? It's not as linear as dealing with DPs, right? A lot of the time they'll do delayed meaties, or they may do like, ID back jump H, or they may do like something just to like make sure you didn't bait it, which in turn enables you to do, jump on wake up, backdash, whatever. It enables you to even mash on bigger buttons. Typically the benefit of this, the way that this works, is this move is active for 6 frames and 1 frame startup. Another thing that is also 7 frame startup is your close slash. So sometimes if they try to bait too much, I'll do wake up close slash because, it starts my offense and essentially it punishes them for being too respectful of my option. Again, you have to always consider this against Baiken because pretty much the only way to actively deal with it is to constantly interact with this character, right? That's pretty much the big thing to understand. Basically, a large part of Baiken is using the threat of an option. So the threat of tatami, the threat of parry, these are 2 main things that kind of define her. So I'll show off some combos, for example, that are very important. Like, typically, almost everything you do into tatami will combo into 2S H Kabari. This is very important for her knockdowns. When she gets like substantial hits, for example, like here, if she gets a substantial hit off this, it's been a while since I've been doing this combo. There you go. It's a very good route, and it's like a good example of the type of damage she can do with meter. What's very important about her is recognizing screen positioning. So like, you can see if I ended in the previous combo, I pretty much got like 120, and on this one I got almost 200 damage. All that was different was the screen positioning. Yeah, 128. So 128 without recognizing screen position. 200 if you are close to the corner. So recognizing how close to the corner you are is very important. A lot of her weakness does come from the fact that she doesn't really have super stable or like high damage anywhere else. And that means in a game like Strive, it's a pretty big deal, but at least she makes up for it with her ability to gain risk super high. But of course, her offense is highest in the corner, and that's essentially what matters the most. This is kind of like my early impression if you want to play her and pick her up. We're still pretty early. It's only been like about a month, right? Almost a month. There's still like a lot to figure out. Just recently I figured out like, I think her air game is like essential. Like I think it's not really optional. I think you kind of have to play it in a very grounded, reliable way to force them to use the air, or a lot of the time you can lose to some of the stronger characters. And I don't think she's bad. I think she's just hard. You know what I mean? I think there's a big difference between difficulty and how bad they are. You know what I mean? That's basically my first impression. So I hope it helped.